Oh, wait a minute. Oh.
Hello
Ooh.
and welcome to Nerdarchy. For nerds, by nerds. I'm Nerdicus Steve, and tonight, as usual, I'm joined by Nerditor Doug. What's up, my man?
Yo, just here. I was just discovered dark mode on my desktop, which is causing me
Life
to lose
changing
the
is
light.
life
Yeah.
changing. Actually, I don't have it on. It's on the studio. Has the dark
Oh,
mode.
okay. Yeah, yeah.
And that's where I'm at. So tonight we're supposed to be talking about goblins, I think, right?
Yes, things that creep around in the dark mode.
Like ghosts and goblins.
Yeah, that's true. Is that that game where you get hit and you're knocked out of your armor into your undies?
Yes, yes, and you had the heart boxers on.
Oh,
Oh, it
that's
was one
right.
of the freaking hardest games ever.
Yeah, you only got two hits. Boom.
Yeah, yeah.
Just
Back
like a
in my
goblin.
day, you kids. Oh man! So a little while ago, we started a little bit of a new series.
Hmm?
Three new ways to whatever, I guess.
Sure.
Insert D&D monster or race here, species, culture, whatever you want to call them.
We'll say
Uh,
creature,
Creature that
technical
works.
term.
So we've done orcs, we've done kobolds, we've done goblins. They're all up. We
Hmm.
filmed dwarves. We'll see if people want to know about like the mundane races. So
Hmm.
so that's up on the channel. People can kind of go look at that if they wanted to see what we're doing with that. Someone who is better at this stuff would probably have went and got that video and put a link somewhere so you guys can go check it out if you wanted to.
So I think that kind of stuff is something that a lot of us might take for granted. Um, that like a brand new players to any role playing game or anything might not, because you think like, well, it's a game and it says there are these, murderous little chaotic evil things that live in caves and stuff and yada yada, and that's great. But also, it's the same as we talk like we say with dwarves or humans or anybody else. It's like, well, I mean, they don't have to be like that all over the planet, if it's your world or and also the events that player characters take in the campaigns might change, goblins' culture or their interactions with them. I mean, even in the halcyon days of my youth of younger editions, I mean, it was not uncommon for there to be one last goblin alive that became like a sidekick or an
I
informant.
I feel like when we were playing that didn't happen nearly as much. Um,
Not as much, but I mean, it was not
I think it's more common now, right?
oh, for sure.
Uh, Players get attached to the monsters and like things are less defined now, and they should be because it makes sense. Like why would all the cultures evolve exactly the same, right? That
Right.
doesn't that's weird and doesn't make sense. Like if you're a goblin and you're in the Underdark, and then you have goblins on another continent someplace,
Yeah.
that
Or like
live.
plains dwelling culture or something.
Yeah, like
Right.
why would they be exactly the same, right?
Sure.
Um, you know, and so, but there's this weird thing too in D&D, right?
Hmm.
Where I know some people kind of like have an issue with like the races being evil, like
Sure.
culturally evil, right? But then you have this weird situation that happens in a fantasy world where possibly the deities are very closely tied to the world.
Hmm.
So the deities can absolutely be evil, right? Because they free will, they have the choice of doing that. But then like they created this other race, and also like depending on the deity, they might also take like you know more or less active role in guiding the evolution of that race, right?
Sure.
So if an evil creature creates you and the societal laws that you're kind of raised under and norms you're raised under tend to be dark and evil, I would think it would be much easier for that thing to kind of exist
Sure.
and,
Yeah.
and be there.
Yeah. I think that's just a sign of a more, I'll say postmodern sort of thinking players, right? Like,
Yeah.
because at the base, when you boil everything down, it's a game, and it's like, well, those goblins and things like that are chaotic evil because that's like relative to the players. Like their goals are going to be evil, as far as you're concerned. And if you want to get more into, to sort of dovetail into your video and series and stuff, if you want to get more into why they do those things and the players, characters want to take a hand in that, well, that just ends up being role playing. And to the point of the video and the website posts that go along with it, I feel like, if you at least have some sort of thoughts about why the goblins in your encounter with everything are there and what they want, then, that's going to go a long way to helping you, if the players do ask those questions, like it'll bring about like social encounters and things like that, or exploration, because I want to know more about your world. So even if it turns out that they are just pawns of an evil god, created to spread evil, at least that, right? And maybe they'll be curious to like look into deities' influence on their world, learn more about the gods that are, affecting the adventures they're in. I mean, it's going to stimulate something.
Yeah, and too, like
Details.
it's always okay for the the monster manual have this like standard. This is the norm for this particular, for most D&D multiverses, right? But just because goblins in the monster manual are evil doesn't mean all of your goblins have to be. Um, and also, even if a culture or society of goblins are evil, it doesn't necessarily mean every single one of them is evil, right, as well. So like you can have standouts in there as well. And I feel like in our own campaigns, we've always changed the monsters. Yeah. The quote unquote game we called Micro Celebrity Game that I had run, the Olin guy was a tribe of orcs that, rode giant goats and raised goats. And a lot of their culture was based around their relationship with with those creatures, right? They're a big part of their society and how they lived. And, they used them for milk. They would shear them for their wool. They used them as mounts. So it was like it was a very spiritual animal that they kind of bonded. But you could do the same thing with goblins or any race, really. But it's just like one tiny tweak, and then like it becomes a new monster.
Right.
Also, just because you could even take evil monsters, make them good, and they can still fall into adversarial roles with your players and in your games. Sure. They might be a good society, but like maybe they found whenever dwarves or elves or humans show up, people start going missing. Their fellow goblins start dying. So maybe they might not be openly hostile, but they might be like very aggressive. Like, you need to not be here. You need to move on. We don't like strangers around here.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, how often is it that, adventurers are invading, the goblins' homes and things like that, right?
I also do like that Davilo is talking about their party acquiring a kobold henchman that he's going to turn into a swobold. It's like the best. That is the best part of. I think it's in the Creature Codex.
Yeah,
swobolds, and what was the other thing?
I think Ted Sakura from Nerd Immersion submitted the swobold.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think so.
I wish I would have known that when we had him on.
But I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
I would have spent more time picking his brain.
You like that, right?
Had I known, it's just funny. I like dumb stuff like that. That and the my other favorite from that book is the shark in a fishbowl.
Yeah, you really liked that one too. It was an ooze, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's an ooze. I don't know. I have a special place in my heart for the ridiculous.
Sure. Hey man, it's a ridiculous settings that these games take. I mean, even if it's a dark and grim place, it's like there's still magic and weird forces doing things that are strange and bizarre that might be silly sometimes. So for the website side of that video series, like I was thinking of campaigns that I've ran, and like like have those creatures showing up. And a lot of those common ones I just don't even use anymore as much unless it's like in a published thing, because it's like, I want to do, kookier things and get into like strange other monsters that are, and there's just so many other books. So I was like, well, I kind of have like a quasi setting default setting that I run games in. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to use the DMG and just, a bunch of random tables to like come up with like the goblins for my world and the orcs and that sort of thing. So that's been fun. And they had nothing to do, they were literally just like tables that I found. I think one of them was like, for what the organizational structure of the region is. And so, I was like, oh, well, these goblins are, I think it ended up being like a kleptocracy that I just rolled on the chart. And they were like originally from the Beastlands, which is a plane of existence for neutral good. And I was like, okay. So I just tried to, and one of in the DMG, the description of the Beastlands, like all the planes, they have those like one quirky, like optional, here's what can happen when there's creatures here. So I think theirs was like anytime that a beast is killed on that plane, there's a chance that you're able to like transform into the beast or something for like a day, something like that. And I was like, okay, that's cool. I'll give these goblins that. And in my world, they just found their way through the plains and wound up in that setting. And they have this, that's what I came up with. They're stealing and stuff. And I was like, well, I try to relate things to like my own personal real life, not in the sense of like the specific details, but like to what you're talking about earlier about not all cultures are the same. I mean, that just seems like no duh, right? I mean, it's like you're from New Jersey, you guys have different, we're both human, but you have different, slang and customs and dialect and everything, right? Values.
You visited New Jersey, you can draw your own conclusions.
I mean, everybody does, it's just there's a lot of space between people. So it's just been fun coming up with those things. And I was thinking like, well, now they have like a place in the world, and if I ever decide to use them, they'll have some interesting quirks, and maybe players will find out more about them. That's right. I got detracted. And as far as like being a kleptocracy, I was like, well, they're from some plane where there's just like all this primal beasts, and they probably, they ended up here, and maybe they encountered humans, and we do that. I mean, we steal from each other and stuff. And maybe they were just like, oh, I guess that's what they do here. And so they just got really good at it. Nice. They can steal the best stuff. Oh, and I was like, well, maybe they, on a meta level, they sort of like steal nearby cultures to adapt to their own too. They're like, we don't know what to do here. Like
sample.
What's that?
In sample. In the Goblin world, we call that sampling.
Okay. Yes. They're extra planar DJ goblins.
So I added the link to the article into the description as well if you want to check that out. So when I asked what the Swobold is basically a kobold that is jacked. Is the best way to describe them in Creature Codex, I believe. But yeah, so like I said, we had done that video, and we've in our own 5e game, like we started using goblins as a playable race even before
super early
Volo's Guide came out. Yeah, so like it must have been right after 5e came out is when we ran that campaign.
Yeah, and started like right away.
And it's funny. It's funny how many people asked us, like, how are they playing goblins? How could they do this? There are no goblins. I'm gonna let you guys in on a secret. You can play whatever. You can play the game however you want. And really, so the only thing we did was we just filed the serial numbers off of our halflings, painted them green, and gave them dark vision and 30-foot movement instead of brave. Because my players are like, goblins wouldn't be brave. So I'm like, okay, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Although they did benefit from lucky. So
what's that?
They did benefit from lucky. And I think we used the stout halflings.
Well, that's the thing about like homebrew stuff, especially for your own games. It's like it really just has to be as balanced as everybody at the table accepts. I mean, even if they were like OP compared to even the other players at the table, you guys played the game for like 5 years and nobody seemed to care. So
Yeah.
it was balanced for the fun of your group.
Yeah, well, that's all relative. Also, too, like when you're talking about basically taking an existing race already,
Mm-hmm.
it's not that big a deal.
Sure.
Besides, it made it all the more painful that the Dragonborn still did not have dark vision in that game. Just a lonely Dragonborn sitting here in the dark. The
Yeah,
blood of
that's interesting how if you think about that stuff comes up. Like I was just playing last night, my brother and they had two sidekicks who were both human, but they both had dark vision. And there was a real debate for them. That they're like, "Well, should we let them light a torch?" It's like, no, they're blind. It's they can't see. It's dark down here.
oh yeah. No, make the humans fumble around in the dark.
And it didn't save them from the ghouls that burst out of the ground in the death house. So whether they would have had light or not,
I have not played that. Did you say wolves?
ghouls.
Ghouls. Okay, that makes more sense for sure. I
Those
was
are
like, wow,
nasty.
that is brutal. Wolves bursting right out of the ground.
I don't know. I think I'd rather face wolves bursting out of the ground than ghouls.
Yeah,
Wolves paralyze you.
ghouls are hardcore unless
They
you're an
lost the
elf.
sidekick.
I think unless you're an elf. Are elves still immune to ghouls paralyzation?
Was it that they were immune or?
Yeah, they used to be immune, right? But
Yeah,
they
I don't
weren't
think they're
immune.
immune anymore.
But they weren't immune to the ghast.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, up until third edition, I'm pretty sure that's how it was.
Yeah, I knew they had some kind of interaction. I didn't remember if they were immune or susceptible to it, but you
Yeah.
said it was probably immune. Yeah, I
Uh,
remember reading an article in Dragon like way back in the day why that was too. Like why are elves immune to ghouls paralyzation? I don't remember now, but
no, it was definitely one of those weird holdovers. I have no idea why they're immune or were immune.
sure. Yeah. It's like, did the Dragon magazine article just retro answer that, or was that the real original reason? We'll never know.
We'll never know.
If only there was some way to look up old information.
I'm just gonna have to hit up Luke Gygax and be like, you
Yeah,
must
there
know
you
this.
go.
From
Yeah,
now on.
just needle him with all those.
Yeah,
like,
for
why
all
are
these
elves
like
immune?
minutia. Why?
I'd say he'll be the new Jeremy Crawford for those kind of questions.
Yeah. It's like you were there. Like
Yeah,
I
you
was
probably
3.
were the elf who was immune to the paralyzation.
Yeah. But
And that must be weird, huh?
what's that? Growing up Gygax?
Yeah, and just to be, like all those things that just happened at your table are like tropes that people celebrate all over the world now. Like,
Well, no, what else is weird? Like, I think you can go to the Gygax house
Mm-hmm.
and like rent it, right? And rent it to play games.
No, I think there's just some people that live there and they're really like nice and accommodating when people show up, is what I heard.
I don't know. See now I've heard two different stories. I must figure out
I mean,
which
there's a
is
video where
correct.
like Matt Mercer and like Stefan Pokorny and Satine went and visited. I'm sure they were
Yeah,
accommodating for that if you just rolled up in your nerd
yeah, but if you're not a gamer,
pajamas.
those people don't mean nothing to you.
Yeah, right.
I
Well,
mean,
yeah,
they're just people like anyone else.
that's true. But they probably have money and cameras
Well,
and
they do have
this
that.
massive bathroom.
That does make a bit of a difference.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't just like if Dave Bryant rolled up and
You're like, hey, I have a
That's like
camera.
your house.
It's not quite
Yeah.
as, but they probably have nicer ones for sure.
Well, maybe not.
Yeah, I'm looking now. It doesn't look like elves are no longer immune.
Oh, okay.
Nice. It's weird, like because we've been playing so long, I just got so many additions rattling around in my head.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
So, do you have any favorite goblin moments in your games?
That's I don't really. I haven't really played any. Nobody's played a goblin in a game, and like I said, I mean, I tend to just not end up using goblins a lot, even in low level games, because it's like, well, it makes more interesting things to me. Maybe it's not to the players, but it's like I've just used them so many times as like a kid and everything, and fought them. And I can't. I mean, Lord of the Rings is probably the thing I think about the most with goblins, and just like the Fellowship of
Yeah.
the Ring, and the Hobbit too. You know, when they were in those goblin caves, and it's like, I mean, that's kind of like part of the appeal of goblins. They're sort of like kobolds in that sense. They're just countless of them, like scurrying about beneath the earth, and you know they bow to the strongest one that there is, and you know they. I mean, it's kind of like, you know, part of where you could sort of like take role playing cues from their alignment too. It's like, well, you might not necessarily have to kill all of them, but you know, you could go a longer way towards, you know, interacting with a goblin by like a show of strength, because they would probably, you know, just instinctually, you know, cower to the strongest one, or that rare kindness, which, you know, players can go for it too. Or, but that might be weird to a goblin, might never have
No
been
one's been
treated
nice to me
nicely his
before.
entire life. Like, it wouldn't even know what that, like, what that is, what that means, why they were doing that. I probably think you're trying to trick them.
So my brother Ryan caught his first body uh to goblins.
He what?
Although admittedly those they weren't really normal goblins.
What did he do? What happened?
He caught his first character death.
Oh.
Yeah.
Recently or as a kid?
No. I mean first. So like he would have been like 16.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I mean it also happened more often back then, I feel like. Yeah.
Life was cheap in
Yeah, they
in
were
the
like
80s and
storming a
90s.
necromancer's tower or evil wizard's tower. I mean,
Mhm.
they in themselves were evil as well, but they got caught in a box like a box cannon ambush.
A kill zone.
They did to to goblins riding wargs wearing full plate and using lances.
Nice.
It was so they were like heavy mounted cavalry for goblins, and it got ugly fast.
Was that a planned encounter?
I think it was. It
Yeah, because
was.
you were the DM.
Yeah.
So
I
that's a
mean,
nice illustration of how different things are too. Because it's like, well, that's a situation where, you know, you said many times like you used to write everything down, and so at least you have that documentation that you, it's like, well, I planned to screw you guys over from the beginning, but you could have
yeah,
maybe
yeah.
avoided it. Whereas now it's like, you know, that's sort of like if you did that without any planning, it's sort of just like rocks fall, you die. It's like, well, I could just, you know, they could be fire breathing wargs, then they have plate armor on too if you wanted. You know,
Yeah.
it's like
They
you
had
could easily make it where they have no chance.
there was archers on the walls, and then and then the stampede of cavalry. And back then too, like Ted's character took like 3 rounds before he was ready to fight. He had all these like sonic things he would do, and because he was the Dugar.
Yeah,
He was
he likes talking about the scorpion tail.
Yeah, so he would use a sonic Dugar that would use it was like animal transformation or something, but would let him take on aspects of the animal.
Animal affinity, I think it was called.
Yeah, that's what it was, animal affinity. So he'd have to spend a round to turn on his animal affinity. Then he would enlarge. Then he would go invisible. Then he'd be ready to fight. By that time, his party was dead. So, well, only one of the characters died.
You're like, you need one power that turns you into a giant invisible person with a scorpion.
Scorpion person, yeah.
I like Brian Smith's comment. That is, yeah, about to run Fandelver and really plan to play up the fact that one goblin always gets away. That's fun.
I have plenty of players that would run that one goblin down. They hate to leave anything alive.
Yeah, but again, as the DM, it's like, I mean, you can always sort of make sure something gets away if you want.
Oh yeah, yeah. I always find it odd though, like when players are like they must murder everything. Like,
Well, I mean, that's fair though. You think like, oh, if one get away, is going to get reinforcements. Maybe you'll always be in danger. They might attack the town you're going to, or ambush you, and slit your throat while you're sleeping.
Maybe.
God bless you, man.
I think it's situational. I think a lot of times my characters are like, they're running away, and we'll let them go.
I just, yeah, it's hard to, I don't know. I guess I'm just not it's hard to imagine like a brutal character playing when I'm just not used to it. Like if it's a video game, hell yeah, I will hunt down every, it's like I want the thing to say cleared on the location and stuff.
Yeah,
There's nothing
XP,
left.
XP and loot.
Yeah, and just just to see that little check mark, like nope, killed everything there.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, in games it does seem kind of cruel sometimes to just like mercilessly or brutally slay like helpless enemies. But then again, you think like, well, if it was by your own machinations that made them helpless, it's like, well, we were going to kill them anyway. Is it that much different just because it was like in the heat of violent battle? Whereas
Have
if
you
you
played?
just, like
Have you played any
paralyzed
goblins yet?
everybody and killed them, what's that?
Have you played any goblin characters yet?
No.
I think I've just played the one, Rufus Rotten Root.
Didn't you play was that the guy in that with the serrated scimitars and stuff?
Oh yeah, that was a one shot.
Yeah.
So, and that was a goblin also. So Rufus Rotten Root, I played for the Savor Dice podcast,
Oh, okay.
and he was a Beastmaster Ranger.
Oh, you really like Beastmaster Ranger, don't you?
Well, I don't know. Yeah, I kind of do.
Sure. I'm not. There's no
I
judgment.
think
You
I
like-
do it to thumb my nose up at the establishment.
Oh, really? It's not because you like having critters and stuff.
It depends. Like it's very specific. I've played like 4 Rangers, and 3 of them have been Beastmasters.
Okay.
Yeah. So that one had a giant crab as well, Shelly. And also the relationship between the ranger and the crab might have been questionable.
Well, you really are a crab aficionado too. Didn't you just celebrate your anniversary with crab dinner?
I did. I don't know if that's really a celebration of the crab by feasting
Sure.
upon it, though.
Yeah, sure. You love it. You love it.
I love it so much in my belly. Yeah. That was pretty good. Yeah. So also, yeah, I played a College of Swords bard, and I always want to call them blades because of the old kit.
Because the kit.
Yeah, from second edition. I mean,
Sure.
they're clearly modeled after that.
Sure.
But yeah, Nilbog.
Oh, okay.
His thoughts were if he told everyone his name was Nilbog, they'd be like, "Is he a Nilbog?" And if they're other goblins, they might not want to mess with him.
I do like nilbogs. There's a Hooked on Adventure post that features a nilbog, and I really took a lot of time. I'm like, I want to make like everything the opposite of what you think you've had to do, and like what it was goal was and stuff. It's poor farmer Jethro again, but now the town that he sells his vegetables at is endangered. It's fun.
So is that another one that is one that Ted wrote, right?
No, I wrote it, but I
Okay.
just liked heaping misery upon poor farmer Jethro.
That is funny.
Yeah, I was like, maybe this one he's bringing his stuff to market, but there's a nilbog that is sort of like taken over the town and has like it gave a curse of nilbogism to everybody, so they're like acting the opposite that they normally would.
Oh, nice.
Chaos.
So they have to solve the disease of Nilbogism.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And if you got questions, folks, just put question in front of it so we can pick them out a little bit easier.
Somebody had said earlier, like, it'd be fun to play an all-goblin party. Hell yeah, for several reasons. One, it'd just be a different perspective because they're goblins and they're not necessarily, like, heroes. But two, just, I've really come to, like, I don't want to say expect or want, but, like, I really like games where the group has some kind of bond, like from those Bastards or just other games I've played where it's like, I don't know, just a real good hook like that where they can always fall back on that for role playing. Like they're all goblins, they're all siblings, they're all wizards or whatever. I think that's fun.
It makes bonds. It makes bonds into the group, so it makes everything so much easier to do.
And it gives everybody one thing that they all have in common, like that's the same.
Yeah. So Dave Erlo wants to know thoughts on the UA Ranger. You can expect we'll be shooting a video on that this week, and now it's just a matter of when it'll actually go up.
Probably Monday. Usually, stuff.
Let's see. We shoot this week. Probably not Monday.
Huh?
No, maybe the end of next week.
I mean,
Um,
hot take. It's like, oh, there's another magical Beastmaster that's better than the Beastmaster.
yeah, yeah. Well, no, because this week the videos are already at the editor, so
Yeah.
if we shoot it, we won't be able to get it to the. It'll be next week's batch, so towards the end of the
Hmm.
week. So I haven't even looked at them yet. I saw them. I saw it's dragon themed, so I'm like, I wonder what's next. Next, especially if we see a couple more UAs and there's more dragon stuff. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay, I
Right.
guess they're doing a dragon book.
Yeah. I mean, just broadly, we had talked about this earlier. Like, I like the idea of a character, maybe a ranger or any kind of character, where like that's a pet class, but that is your main thing. Like, it's not like I can attack and my pet can, or like my pet can do the same thing as me. It's like, no, that's all you do. Like, all your stuff's just about using the pet for something, like buffing it. It's your weapon, and it can do.
Yeah,
Maybe as you level up, you'd get different choices of what the thing could do.
I feel
I think
like
that's
the problem with that sometimes is like if you lose that pet for whatever reason for however long, you're like screwed.
eh, just make it a you can use it. You can. It's just like a spirit thing.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it depends on how hard it is to get it back. Um, but like, I think the way the ranger is now, if it was like that, you're beat for a day until you can
Yeah.
summon a new one.
Beastmaster is awesome if you're not in a like high precision tactical combat heavy campaign. If you're in
Well,
like I mean, you've played enough. Has it been a burden or died? No, it's probably a fan
I don't
favorite.
think
It's probably a
so.
group favorite. You care about it. It's another character to interact with, and
I don't think so. I think like it depends on one the tactics and how you do things,
mm-hmm.
right? Like Shelly with my goblin character, like that character was an archer. Shelly was a mobile platform that gave me a bunch of extra movement every round, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just stand on Shelly's back and shoot arrows at things.
Okay.
So tactically, like if you're small and you're a Beastmaster, it becomes even more valuable. And then certain companions give you certain abilities that you can kind of use to your advantage. Like I don't think the Beastmaster is bad as people say. Like there's only one issue that I have with the Beastmaster, and mathematically you can just look at it and see it's an issue, and that's the hit points.
Mm-hmm.
They do a better job um with the pet classes going forward because they get significantly more hit points. I mean, as is the ranger maxes out at about 80 hit points, right, for the beast companion at 20th level.
So it's like a squishy.
Yeah,
Still
there's
squishy.
monsters can do that much damage in a round.
Have you
Um,
ever given your pets magic items though? I mean, they can wear stuff, cloaks, rings.
no, not yet. I haven't. Like I
Hmm.
don't think I've been an I haven't had the opportunity to do that, or I probably would. Like the giant crab's good because it's very tanky,
Hmm.
so
Oh,
it
I can
doesn't.
totally picture Sheldon with like a cloak of protection.
Yeah, yeah, or headband of
Shell.
intellect.
Yeah.
That would
Oh,
be the
yeah.
best.
That should be our next quest when we revisit those bastards. The quest for the band of intellect,
Well,
or to
so
awaken. Or I mean, as we know, one of the most difficult spells to cast is awaken because of that just truly ridiculously big agate that you would
yeah,
need.
the agate that's the size of a house.
Yeah.
So I totally lost my train of thought.
Well, what is to dovetail like oh boy, twice in one day. I never use that word. Into playing a goblin campaign. What I think might be fun is to do that, but like play more folklore goblins. And I was
Mm.
thinking of this book today, which that's great. There's also a post on the website. It's just a kids like folklore book, but like hobgoblins and gobs and things. They were like helpful creatures that like lived in your drawer and things like that, and they would tidy up your house and for you, and you had to leave like milk out for them at night, and they would also watch against like other dangers from outside or other dangerous fey creatures. I think that would be a freaking awesome And like the humans didn't see you and stuff. But that would be a great, really fun campaign to play, where you're
Uh,
like little goblins. That
you
live.
mentioned magic items, so that made me think of a rune in the Scarlet
Okay.
Sisterhood game, which they attuned a circlet of blasting to a rune. So that one in my game that did actually happen when I was
Oh,
DMing.
I was thinking like a rune, not a rune.
No, a rune was a Orakar they call it, I
Norak, yeah,
think.
yeah, I remember. It was Gene's
So
character, right?
we were actually talking about kind of like a half a goblin game earlier. Ted's like, he was watching my Scarlet Sisterhood campaign, and he's like, I got two campaign ideas from watching that so far.
Wow.
One was the Gork game. He wants to run the Gork game. So in my campaign, like the players met this tribe of orcs and Olin guy, and they kind of hung out with them, and Pickle Dick is one of the Gobblos, one of the goblins, um, and he courted one of the orcs. So like they were having relations and sending messages back and forth. So I was like, all right. So I had her show up pregnant in the campaign, and and so then she ended up having triplets because I had him roll a die 6 for for how many children he was going to have. Because clearly, if you combine a goblin and an orc, I think they're going to have a litter.
Yeah, yeah,
For sure.
and that's a Gork.
Yeah, so they were calling them baby Gorks.
Would they be the natural enemies of Dwelves?
They might be. I don't know.
We might have
Uh,
to. We
I
might have to
didn't
revisit the.
Gork versus Dwarf.
Yeah,
Sounds like a webcomic.
I like the Dwelves in our that we came up with. I think it's cool.
I know it goes against the dwarf in me to mix elf and dwarf together. Yeah. So Ted was talking about running a campaign with those characters. He's like, yeah, but the only problem is there's only 3 of them. So if we wanted a bigger party, I'm like, no problem. Pickle Dick was kind of sleazy. He probably had a side chick. So, and he was totally the kind of goblin that would just go from one to the other. So they could have even got knocked up on the same time.
And who knows what the gestation period for a Gork is? Could be, or an orc.
Yeah.
Maybe it's like a month.
But I think like it used to be. I don't know if it still is. Half orcs used to mature much faster.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think they were like adults at like 14 or something.
Yeah, I think it was even younger than that. Now, what's the youngest? The Aarakocra, or like the
Yeah, they mature at 3.
Yeah,
but they have a lifespan of 30 years.
Yeah, beware of ghosts and
Styxes
if you are an Aarakocra.
Yeah, that was actually fun. Like sometimes when we research these videos, and I know despite all the mistakes that we make, we actually do research. I don't know if that makes it better or worse. But yeah, looking at the different ages when we're looking at ghosts, going, "Oh wow, this totally sucks." Because there was definitely like at least 3 of them that you could just be offed.
Thank God, haste haste used to age you the spell.
Yeah, it used to add a year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or take a year away. So
crazy.
Well, that magic juice is no good for you. No matter where the speed comes from.
Yeah. Somebody had mentioned earlier the goblin boss's redirect attack being a fun reaction. Hell yeah.
Oh, it is one of my favorite.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it was something I wanted to try to pull off or I did. And I used the goblin boss against my players. And since there were goblins in the group, I let them use it on them.
Oh yeah, it does say the goblin chooses another goblin within 5 feet of it.
I think it's totally legit, man.
Absolutely. That's a great GM tip right there for all y'all out there.
That's incredible. Make your goblin bosses more deadly. Use them against the player character goblins.
Yeah. Wow, they could. Yeah, so their own party members would hit them.
Yes, they would.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's a great thing to
But
point.
since you haven't really had any goblins in your games, I guess it doesn't really matter.
No, but as a part of what we do is make a lot of content. I could totally see just swapping out Goblin for all manner of things. Like
Yeah.
you could make that and insert whatever boss. It's like elf, human,
But drunken
creature.
master, they have an ability where the reaction, they spend a key point and they can redirect the attack at someone else as well.
Yeah, I like that it's the same thing that a player might be though. Like
Yeah.
specifically like that. That's just fun quality.
Judo flip.
Yeah, reactions are some of my like those are my favorite thing to come up with often for creatures because like they don't all creatures don't have them, and it's like man, you think of a real good reaction that goes with their other actions, and and the way it flows, their action economy is pretty fun.
The Hokar would entertain people by doing a haka. That's how they kind of communicate anyway, right? They scrape against their exoskeleton. Um, oh, that's still like that.
Their language says hook horror. Let's see. Yeah, the
Yeah.
subterranean caverns where these creatures dwell echo with the constant clacking and scraping of their hooks.
Yeah. They so they in AD&D they look so cool, and then in the third edition version I hate it. I thought it looked because it just looked kind of like a bug.
That had to be a crazy wizard did it, right?
The Hokar, man, I don't
I
remember.
mean, come on.
It's always the crazy wizard in third edition. I mean, in first and second edition, they carried that a little bit of that on over in yeah. See, in 5e they went back to the closer to the original AD&D,
Yeah,
which looks
like
way cooler. Did you have Did you have the toy? I had the toy when I was a kid.
Oh yeah, dude! I had all those AD&D. The ones I remember the most was the fire elemental. For some reason, I had the hook horror, but yeah, I loved going to KB Toys and getting those things.
Trying to remember if that like had the button or where it did something.
No, they were just pieces
straight
of
up action figures. Yeah,
it was just a single piece of like rubberized plastic.
I'm ready to say Hookar. That's one of my favorite monsters.
I've only faced one time in modern era playing, which was in that Greyhawk game I played with Sean McGovern, where I was the Spore Druid. That was a really fun campaign. Oh, you know what? We faced. I think we upset the dungeon ecology enough to like kind of really harm the goblin culture that was living in that dungeon. I don't remember why, but I think we really sort of like upset things.
One of our monster BFFs is the Hookar and Dark Mantles.
Ooh. Why is that? Why?
Well, it's a brutal combination because of the Dark Mantle's 15-foot darkness combined with the Hookar's
blind sight.
Blind sight, yeah. And I guess the idea was they became predators that would hunt in tandem.
Oh, okay.
The Dark Mantles would just kind of follow the Hookars around. Well, either that or they just shared the same hunting ground and they just learned to work together.
Boy, speaking of Dark Man, oh sorry. What did you use that in a game? You said? Oh no, it was Monster BFF.
It was a Monster BFF.
I remember that one.
We never. You don't remember that one?
No.
That's surprising. Yeah, we never use any of those things in our own games. Because we all play together, right? So it's like, well, even when it was Nate, Ryan, me, and Ted, we don't like one of us would probably be running the game we're playing in. So, we got so it was easy to not use that stuff.
Speaking of Dark Mantles, and with Halloween right around the corner, the Hag's Apprentice was one of my favorite encounters, and I did run that last Halloween for our fan game. That's really fun, where the Dark Mantle is the hat.
Yeah.
It looks like a witch's hat because it's pointy with the with the
yeah.
And then what did it have? It had some other creature for a.
Was it the cloak? Or was it using
a cloaker? That was the real mastermind behind everything.
Oh yeah,
the witch's cape was the cloaker, like whispering in the Cyclops' ear.
Yeah,
because we needed like a big dumb creature to be
And
manipulated.
then we had the cauldron for like a lair effect kind of thing.
Yeah, that was a fun. If you say.
Yeah, I should run that one. That was fun.
Mm-hmm.
I've run the Forbidden Library a couple times.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I ran it for the fan game, and then I went and ran it in one of the other games that I'm playing in because
Cool.
they're looking for a demon's true name so they
Oh,
can
okay.
summon it.
Where
So
else
I
would
was
it
like,
be?
well, the Forbidden Library seems like the perfect place to put that.
Sure.
Um, so that was so easy to drop in.
Yeah, that's great. Was that the family game?
Yeah, yeah, that's the family game with my nephew, my son, my wife, and one of David's friends.
But this is one of our more meandering chats, I must say. But I don't know.
Yeah.
Stick on topic. How much can you say about goblins? I looked up. There's a lot of posts about goblins on the website.
Well, their favorite monster, and like at some point, I guess it's Pathfinder that kind of made them cute,
Yeah, they do have a cool,
like
distinctive
kind
look.
of like little chaos monkeys, kind of.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right. You had the How to Speak Goblin comic.
Yeah, we did that for a while. We did at least
One
a
of the
year of
cool
those.
one of the cool things about goblins, and not even specific to goblins, but just like weaker creatures like that, is they're really easy to sort of like customize, right? Like they don't have a bunch of abilities. They're not
Mm.
really complicated stat blocks. So if you do just give them like one extra thing, like that's why the Goblin Boss is a great, it's just a goblin with that ability. It's got like chain shirt and stuff.
So
But
the other thing that I like to do, and it would work really well for using goblins, is just slapping the goblin on top of one of the NPCs.
mhm.
Even just in the the back of the monster manual, like they see a goblin, but you're using like the stat block for a veteran, a knight, or or the gladiator. They get a little more than they were expecting with that goblin.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, again, that's just sort of like a general good DM tip too, because I think it's sort of, I'd say the I don't want to say default, but it's not uncommon for you just to assume like humans are the most plentiful things. Like the shopkeeper's a human, the innkeeper's a human. So every once in a while, just make it a goblin, a shopkeeper, a bartender, or whatever. It's just that one little extra detail that might be fun, and paint a different kind of picture and make the world seem more real too. Because even if all the goblins are chaotic, evil murderers, it's like it's not impossible that there's one that had a strange story of how they ended up there, right?
One or two that Maguglia has overlooked.
Yeah, sure. I mean, look at or that's makes me think of your character who is a human who was raised by goblins. That's a great like other way to approach goblins too, right?
Yeah, so I'm
Isn't he a
playing a
human?
Raven. Hmm?
He's human, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm playing a Curse of Strahd game, and my character is a Twilight cleric of Maglubiet, and he's like short for a human, but for a
Okay.
goblin, he's kind of tall.
Sure.
So, like his name translates from goblin into common is like too tall or something.
So if you got a chance to like, explore what being a cleric of Maglubiet is like at all, I mean, do you get any like kind of agency to like, do like, well, I do these prayers or rituals every day or anything like that? Any
Well,
goblinisms that you've got to add to the lore?
I have tried converting people. I haven't done anything that, but I have tried converting people to the worship of Maglubiet, and so far my pitch has not worked very great. And I'm like, do you want to fight orcs for all of eternity in the goblin army of Maglubiet? Who doesn't, right?
Is that the major dogma?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like so really orcs, like when orcs and goblins die, they go to like orc goblin Valhalla almost, where they endlessly battle each other.
Is that really the like kind of canon,
Yeah,
quote
it
unquote
is.
canon lore? Okay, I didn't realize that. What plane is that?
I believe it's like one of the hells. Because
Oh,
I
really?
think,
Okay. Yeah, there's a
yeah,
lot.
because I think they're both lawful.
Oh,
Um, Honestly, when I'm playing, I usually just bring up like the wiki and have the
Sure.
information there.
Is your
To
character evil?
No, he's not.
Oh,
um, he might be a little shitty, but he's not evil.
is he good or is he like just neutral?
And I may not even have wrote in alignment.
I mean, not that I just meant. I guess I just meant.
Oh, is he good? Is he a good person?
Yeah.
He's so. Like he doesn't go out of his way do do any harm, right? I'm kind of like live and let live, minds his own business.
So
Uh,
his interpretation of Maglubia Faith is he's sending people to this battle, and
yeah,
he
yeah. So
which he hopes to
Well,
win.
so I did a little bit of the reluctant cleric too. Like he
Huh?
was chosen by Maguglia. He's like, I got sweet goblin powers, and it actually raised his status and stuff. I always like to make up weird facts about Goblin Society.
Sure. Okay.
So,
Yeah, that's what I meant.
oh yeah, yeah, but not necessarily the god or religion, but
ah,
also I couldn't tell you what they are because I make them up on the spot and I do
sure.
not write them down. So I'm
Sure.
terrible. Home plane of Acheron.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's like the endless battlefield or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. So they're just forever just duking it out.
Boy, these gods in these games are real jerks.
Yeah, they usually are. I mean, what do you want? This is the Lord of depths and darkness. We can't really expect a whole lot for somebody
Kind of,
somebody with a name like that.
they're pretty petty too. I mean, it's like, geez, you think they're just living in, the hells for all eternity, just fighting, and it's like, don't you want anything more out of, out of your existence? Seems kind of boring.
Well, I don't know. I mean, that is kind of the right, isn't that's the Norse?
Yeah, that's I guess.
They fight and feast. So, I mean, although I don't know that goblins get to feast after their battle, with Maglubiet.
Mm.
At least like, if you're
It's a
if
fun word, isn't it, Maglubiet?
Maglubiet, yeah, I always
It
struggle to
seems
say
like
it.
pretty
Does
long
not
and
roll off my
flowery.
tongue.
It seems like more like long and flowery than you would think a goblin word would be. Would be.
Yeah. So, but what are you gonna do? Yeah.
He had
So
really
one
cool
of the
art back in
characters.
the day.
What's that?
He had real cool art for him, and what was it, Legends and Lore or D&D?
Yeah. I mean, I always like the Grumsh and the Grumsh mythos as well.
Mhm.
Probably Grumsh was probably one of my favorite deities,
Oh,
and
really?
the orc creation mythos.
Okay.
So that's another thing too. I was like, what do you mean orcs can't or all orcs shouldn't be evil? Have you read the creation mythos? It's very vile.
Yeah.
Although the other gods were kind of jerks to Grumsh, but
Maybe he was a jerk too, but who knows?
yeah, I mean, all the gods are jerks, right? That's
I
kind of
guess
like
that's true
their
of
thing.
our own earthly mythology too. It's like they're mostly just petty siblings who are just assholes to each other, and we just get the spill over on Earth of their squabbles.
Yeah.
Stupid gods, even like the Olympians were like that.
The opening from the Hercules TV show.
I don't
The
remember that.
gods were cruel and petty.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah,
Something
yeah.
like
They
that.
are. I mean,
Yeah, yeah. Ted used to love that show. So like since like I married his sister and I'd be at his house a lot, so he'd be watching it.
oh really?
Yeah.
Kevin
Uh
Sorbo, man.
Also Ted is the kind of person that will like just watch stuff over and over again. So
Maglubiet means defeat in Turkish.
that sucks.
Yeah,
No wonder why he's so angry.
yeah. He's out to prove it. I'm not going to be defeated. I'm going to defeat my enemies.
Yeah, it'll be like he's owning it.
Yeah.
So there was a question.
Was there?
Yeah, the Verilo question: how do you differentiate different dragon attack styles, red, green, black, etc.? Personally, I would take that from more of
Oh boy, my thing.
where they're from, right? The terrain more so than the dragon itself. I think that would be like a greater impact. Um, pardon me, like like blue dragons burrowing through the sand, like you don't really, yeah, that's not really where you're expecting the dragon attack to come from, or I think both green or black, but especially black, are definitely more likely to grab you and drag you into the water, where they're quite at home and you're not.
Hmm.
And then like white and reds, like you have to deal with ice and slipperiness and frozen water possibly for the white. And if you're gonna have a red dragon, there's got to be lava and magma somewheres, right?
Yeah, and I feel like red are the most arrogant. I mean, all dragons are, arrogant. I feel like to some degree they're dragons, but it's like red is like the king of dragon. I don't think they would be sneaky or any, hiding and ambushing you. They'd be like, like these puny mortals are going to come into my lair. I mean, it would just relish like flyby attacks, like just incinerating everything. I think that's how I imagine red dragons anyway. Green dragons, seem real sinister and sneaky, and they would probably try to trick you and like they're malicious. I feel like they want to watch creatures suffer that they wanted to hurt with, just die of poison gas and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you use the spell casting with
Yeah.
dragons as well. Then you end up with some more options as well, and that would change it too. Like,
And
I
their
mean,
bodies are different too. I mean, black dragons always seem to kind of like more sinewy. They would probably just like snake almost like to me to some degree. You know.
so because they have the optional rules for giving your dragon spell casting, which kind of got backed away from a little bit in this edition.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't really know what levels that you get for your spell casting if you're using that. But um a green dragon with spell casting, even spells like stinking cloud and cloud kill. I mean, like we kind of did a video on that stuff, combining those different cloud effects with something that is immune to those immune to the effects. Also, it's Cineri Cloud for the red dragon. Like when these creatures can basically put forth these harmful effects and center it on themselves, and it's not a big deal for them to be in there. So that
Yeah,
really is a hamper for your melee characters.
and I would say look at the whole stat block, like the regional effects. I mean, there's some pretty the layer of actions and things. I mean, some of these regional effects and stuff are pretty interesting too, and that can
Yeah.
really like build the hype and anticipation for. So, like for instance, I'm looking at Red Dragon now. This is just what happens when they are near. There's earthquakes within 6 miles of its lair. Water within a mile of the layer is warm and tastes like sulfur. Rocky fissures within 1 mile of the layer form portals to the elemental plane of fire, allowing creatures of fire into the world that dwell nearby. Those are just like what happens when it lives around there. You know what I mean? So it's like you can really sell the sizzle, no pun intended, of a red dragon or any of them with those kind of regional effects and especially their layer effects. I mean, to your point earlier, like one of them is magma just erupts on the ground, or tremors, or volcanic gases that is like a poisonous cloud of fire and stuff. I mean, that's crazy, man. It's dangerous.
Yeah. The adult green dragon is casting 5th level spells.
Oh, okay, that's pretty nasty.
Yeah, and like the green is definitely not the most powerful dragon. That's cloud kill right there, my friends. That is cloud kill. So that I feel like
Hey,
that's
here's a pretty
maybe be a
cool
bit of
thing
a
about green
hindrance.
dragons. Within 1 mile of its lair, it leaves no physical evidence of its passage unless it wishes to. Tracking it there is impossible except by magical means, which is kind of weird because I'm sure by the time you're fighting an ancient green dragon, you probably have magical means, but whatever.
Yeah, that's not that much of an issue.
Yeah.
But so
Like,
that's what I would look at. I would look at their special abilities, the terrain, and really try and emphasize that. And I feel like a lot of dragons, like they're gonna soften you up before, unless, like you said, the dragon's personality is like really arrogant. But I also feel like if you go with that type of dragon and it has a bad encounter with the players
mhm.
and survives it, then it's going to be on high alert. And you know
Oh yeah,
They've
yeah,
been around a long time.
yeah. They're
Uh,
ancient.
yeah. So at that point, they're gonna be like, yeah, we're not gonna mess around anymore because reasons.
Oh, geez, I know we're past time, so we got to be wrapping up. But would be remiss if I didn't mention the best goblin encounter you could possibly have in your game.
I know the
Goblins
best.
attacking your airship while they're riding flying bats and throwing
That
granados.
that is a pretty good. That is a pretty good
It
encounter.
comes first alphabetically and first in our hearts in out of the box adventure encounters, which is over in the store. But that was one of your guys' favorite ones,
It
and
was the thematically is really cool.
it is one
New
of the
item.
more fleshed out ones too, because you guys liked it so much. There's a lot of like interesting complications and interactions in that one.
So your ancient red dragon gets 8th level spells.
Oh, geez, yeah, okay,
So I mean, if you're using the spell variant, and like,
right.
why would you not?
So at least we got to circle back around to Goblins and plug our thing that is
All
not
at the
even a
same
high level
time.
encounter. You can drop it right in first level or anytime. In the even if they're just traveling to the next town, maybe they take an airship instead. And, oop, bat riding goblin bombardiers attack.
Yeah.
Boom.
You're running Rise of Tiamat, Dragon, and the Dragon Queen, so lots of dragon counters. Yeah. Man, I know Doug doesn't care, but I have mixed feelings about dragons and D&D.
Bring them on, man.
I know you're like more. It makes me feel bad when they get tramped upon because again, dragons are solo monsters, so they're tough. You need to throw. That's the other thing. Throwing in some like weak monsters is part of the encounter
But
as
you're
well.
thinking of like adult and older dragons. I mean, what about wormlings? Those would make great low level villains, and they're smart too. I mean, it's not
Yeah.
like it would be a solo monster. Like they're gonna amass power. It's like, look, I got a long time to live. They're gonna have minions of their own. Even a black dragon wormling might, it's still a powerful creature that would live in a swamp or anything. It's gonna
Yeah,
have a lair.
that that red dragon
Had to start somewhere.
red dragon whirling still has first level spells.
Yeah,
Shield.
and if that's
Mm,
if you have player buy-in in that, it's like, well, that can be fun, especially if it's like
yeah.
known that we're going to be fighting a lot of dragons. In 3.5 we played a campaign that fizzled out pretty quick, but that was the pitch. Like, yeah, it's gonna be all about dragons. Man, I made a guy that would have been awesome for that. He could it was like designed to be fighting dragons and stuff like that. Didn't get to play him maybe one time, but it would have been cool. And it can be cool again if you're that's a great that kind of campaign is great for rangers to pick your
Yeah.
favorite enemy. I mean, that's where you're going to shine big time with that favorite enemy and stuff.
That's true. I mean, I do have a campaign where I think where dragons are a
Yeah.
little more front and center, but not so much
Oh,
fighting
dude,
them.
you could set it up for that setting to have like a dragons versus dinosaur, clash. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe make some souped up, dino lords or something that are like, proto dinosaurs or something.
Do you remember the mass combat system in AD&D?
I remember that there was one, but I don't
I
remember.
think it was a box set. I
Is that
thought
what they
about
used for the Dragonlance DL15, where it was like the war game thing with all the little cardboard chits and whatnot? Or was that?
no, maybe I'm not sure, but the cover was like this barbarian riding a triceratops.
Okay.
Definitely a
You got
piece
to
of
get
art
back
worth
to that.
looking up.
Yeah.
Uh, so with that, like you said, we were past the time. We started a couple minutes late anyway, but thanks everyone for coming and hanging out with us. Remember, if you're watching the Rises game, we won't be playing tomorrow night because it is someone is celebrating an anniversary that day. So we took the night off, but we'll be back the following week. And so until next time, stay nerdy.
Stay nerdy.